Conservative MP Peter Bone, member of the Brexit Select Committee, and the Labour MP and member of the International Trade Committee, Catherine West. Welcome to you both. What do you think? I mean, does the Cabinet need to stay balanced to make sure that people who agree with your views are well represented?
I noticed you asked Ben, as a Remainer, whether he was going to go into government. You haven't asked me whether I've had to call this morning. Not yet,
right,
but my phone is off at the moment. No, I think you want the best person to do the job. And the truth of the matter is everyone in the Cabinet is committed to Brexit, otherwise it wouldn't be in the Cabinet in the first place.
So you wouldn't mind if, I don't know, Ken Clarke, for example?
No, wouldn't mind. He would then have to sign up to coming out of the European Union, which wouldn't be a bad thing.
Do you think that this is influencing the choice of ministers too much, this whole question of where they stand balancing the party?
It's very clear that the ideological split there is driving this government apart. It's falling apart because actually it was Mrs Patel who actually is in trouble because perhaps she wasn't quite up to the job. She certainly didn't understand the Middle East and the delicacies of the delicate situation in the Middle East. And that's a good example of where perhaps somebody was put in due to their kind of position, when actually what they should have been in there was for their ability and their background in foreign affairs. The foreign affairs part of the government is falling apart. The Brexit negotiations are not going well. We've got Mr Fallon, who had to leave due to the sex pest scandal. We've got so we've got a completely new defence person in, with a defence spending which has got lots of questions to be asked about it. And now we've got Mr Johnson, who's basically put his foot in at big time and could have endangered somebody's life as a result.
So do you think, you know, looking at the other way, that Patel owed her position in the first place to where she stood on
No, I disagree with
Brexit?
that entirely. And I think, I mean, I'm no great fan of that department. In fact, I would reduce it.
Well, nor was she.
And that is why I thought that's why I thought she did quite a good job. And she was certainly making our overseas aid money more focused on developing trade in countries, which I think is a good thing. And because one of the advantages coming out of the EU is we will be, at long last, be able to allow developing countries to trade with us, not blocked by the protectionist regime of the European superstate.
Do you detect in the way she's gone that the Foreign Office was trying to undermine her and leaky against her?
I sit here and think, well, the Secretary of State resigned because she thought she'd done something wrong. Machiavellian theories, that doesn't happen in Parliament.
The question is how we knew what she'd been up to. You know, was she leaked against?
Well, that's a very good question, because it always seems so strange that these sort of things happen, you know, in August allegedly, and then suddenly at a particular moment in time,
in November,
yes, they appear when perhaps the government is having other problems. So you do wonder how these stories get leaked, but you probably know more about that than I do.
I mean, Labour appears to think, Tom Watson at least appears to think something pretty underhand's gone on.
Well, I find it extremely strange that the boss does not know what is going on. On the 24th of October, Mrs Patel had 12 meetings. It's not just a cup of tea with a few other members of Parliament while you're on a personal family holidays. 12 meetings, that suggests a high level of organisation, and yet Number 10 didn't seem to know, which seems to me to be extremely strange.
That was the reason she resigned, because they didn't know.
But why doesn't Number 10 know? They should be in charge.
Well, if you do something in secret, and will your boss know?
Well,
would your boss care? I mean,
people should not be doing things to do with the Middle East which are in secret. We have a very important government policy.
But isn't that why the Secretary of State has resigned? For that very reason. I don't think there's any argument that's why she's gone.
I mean, there are conventions which MPs follow informing each other when they visit each other's constituencies, and likewise ministers would tend to inform the Foreign Office when they visit foreign countries.
Yeah, I would do that if I was going abroad, yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
What people out there who are watching this show want to know is that the government is in charge, and at the moment the government does not look like it's in charge. It's falling apart, losing two senior ministers in 1 week. I mean, this is just a shambles.
Isn't it? Yes. No, I mean, these things happen, and as you said, Adam, why did it happen now? Why was it leaked now? And that was to destabilise the government. Theresa May is getting on the job. Every day that goes by, we are closer to coming out of the European Union. Next week, the European Union bill comes back. Labour Party doesn't support what the British people said on that, but, you know.
What do you think about the thing? I mean, albeit doing it in the wrong way in your view, but what do you think about the idea that Priti Patel was floating of maybe giving some of the aid budget to the Israeli army on humanitarian work in the Golan Heights?
Well, I don't know enough about it, but if it's for humanitarian aid, then I'm all... though I criticise that department, I don't criticise the humanitarian aid. I think we should give humanitarian aid wherever it's needed. So I don't know enough about that, but if it was to help save lives, that must be a good thing.
What do you think?
Well, I find it extremely strange that somebody who is senior in the government would allow themselves to be put into a position where they didn't have any officers about them to give them proper advice and allow themselves to be lobbied at that high level in that sensitive way. It just seems to me not to be the right judgment. And I think the other question on judgment is how long has Mr Johnson got? Because the North London family, the Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, that case is extremely sensitive as well. And if Mr Johnson really dodged a bullet yesterday, because if Mrs Patel hadn't been in the news, then he would have, because I think he's got serious questions to ask and he should be considering his own position because he's put somebody's life at risk.
I mean, it should be said the family have not called for him to resign, the husband of her. I mean, do you think he's got off the hook lightly because we've all been distracted by the Priti Patel affair?
No, because I think I'm right in saying he came to the House of Commons and answered an urgent question on it.
Didn't apologise or correct what he'd said.
Well, he came down and explained the situation. So I don't think that's hiding and I personally, I see absolutely no reason for the Foreign Secretary to be fired. I just don't think this is something that is a firing matter or a resigning matter.
On top of what he said about dead bodies in Libya, on top of the other mistakes which he has made, on top of writing a 4,000-word article in a newspaper without telling his boss. I mean, if that happened in a normal workplace...
Oh, hang on a minute, hang on.
Would just be
you can't
outrageous.
pretend that writing a 4,000-word article, which was broadly, or almost entirely supported government policy, was somehow a bad thing to do. You can't... I mean, to suggest you write a newspaper article and you have to resign, that's absurd. That
does bring us back to our early question, is Boris Johnson there not because he's a good Foreign Secretary, but because he's a flag carrier for Brexit?
Well, I think he's entirely there because he's a good Foreign Secretary. I do think the Prime Minister puts people in the posts that they think that they're best for. And he's a big hitter, isn't he? If he goes abroad, people listen to what he says.
The trouble is with being a big hitter and being rather a self-publicist, and I'm familiar because of being a London MP with the former Mayor of London, is that because you do go by that kind of reputation, when you make a mistake, it's magnified.
How would you feel if Peter Bone does get the call and becomes overseas development?
I'd shake his hand, congratulations, because we all want to work together, but I also think that it does have to be the person with experience. And I think that experience, we live in a meritocracy, don't we?
OK, well, we'll be following this story closely. Thank you both very much.
You didn't, frankly, have the balls to put country before party.